Hey guys, it's Emily here, and today I want to talk to you about the second installment in the Mortal Instruments series, and that is City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. Okay guys, so before I jump into a spoilery section about the book, I would just like to point out that if you have not read City of Ashes, go ahead and do it, because the jump from City of Bones to City of Ashes is really quite big. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a really quite spoilery section of the book and discuss and talk about what I thought about it and the points in the book that I really liked, the points in the book that I really sort of didn't like or didn't know how to feel about it. Basically, the first couple of chapters in the book I had a little bit more of a tough time to get into. Probably I think I put it down to the fact that I waited about a week from reading City of Bones to City of Ashes to pick up the second book just because I didn't have it. Once you get into it, it's really quite interesting. So basically what happens is there's all these child murders in the Downworlder Shadowhunter world, and nobody really knows who's doing it. They think it's vampires, and then they're like, no, it must be Valentine. You find out all these different things about the world that are really interesting. The Inquisitor comes, Imogen, the Inquisitor. She comes, and she locks up Jace. She just locks him up because she thinks that he always knew who Valentine was and what he was planning, and he's a spy and all these things, and it was like, what? She locks him up with the Silent Brothers, who we met in the first book, who I don't think I talked about, and then we jump into the second book and Jace is locked up with them. He's hearing all these things and all these sort of demonic sounds and screams, and Silent Brothers can't talk because they've stitched their mouths closed, so it was terrifying to read, really. Valentine basically has killed the Silent Brothers to get the mortal sword. And we find out that Valentine is doing some sort of a crazy ritual with this sword and the blood of these children, and it's really quite spooky. So I think it's like the 7th chapter in the book, and I was still sort of trying to fully engage myself into the book. I was enjoying it, but I was just like trying to sort of find a point in the book that was like, I need to continue reading, and it was creepy and I sort of liked it, but I didn't know how to feel about it, and I was disgusted, and all in one. Okay, so Clary, Jace, Simon and Isabel go to the Sealy Court and meet with the Queen and talk about the murders and things that are happening. Simon and Clary are actually boyfriend and girlfriend at this point in the book, which I found really weird, because Simon was basically just like, she's my girlfriend, and I was like, yeah, could have asked her, like that wasn't a really good way of putting it. So don't drink or eat anything that the Sealy give you, because then you become theirs. Clary played around with one of the berries or something in the drink and got the juice on her fingers, and then one of the little fairy that bit her finger that she got the juice on, and it bled, so she sucked the blood off. As they're leaving the court, they're like, no, she isn't allowed to leave, and then it's just this big thing of why not, and then the Sealy Queen basically says that the kiss that he's most desired will break her free. Harry and Jace were really quite interesting, and I don't know how I felt about them, because I was such a big Clary Jace shipper in the first book up until they were sort of brother and sister. I was still like, oh, I kind of want them to be together, but only because, but not as brother and sister. So because they were brother and sister, I was like, oh, this is so incest, and it got incest really fast. And I was like laughing and just disgusted, all in one big emotional bubble. I didn't know how to feel at the time. Simon's reaction just tore at my heartstrings about that kiss, because obviously they were boyfriend and girlfriend, sort of officially, unofficially, don't really know what happened there. So Simon just sort of storms off and leaves Clary there. They go back to the Institute, and Clary and Jace have this big discussion slash argument, and Jace basically says, look, we can be together in private, and I know it's what you want, it's what I want, we love each other. And I was sort of like, but your brother and sister. So I was like, oh, this is sweet because he really loves her and cares about her. But then I was like, this is so disgusting because you're brother and sister. Stop. From that sort of chapter, I think the book just went and so many things started happening. Simon becomes a vampire. We didn't know that he was sort of sired or blood sired or whatever it was when he was at the vampire lair in the first book, confused and dreaming about it and thinking he was becoming a vampire in the first book, and then in the second book he actually goes back and gets killed by the vampires, and Raphael comes to the Institute, and it's the way that the vampires are created was really interesting. I think that was a really big character development for Simon, because I think he sort of felt that he didn't belong, and Clary had become this shadow hunter who become a part of this world and was becoming stronger and with all these friends that were strong and able to protect her, and Simon was just this human and this mundane who couldn't really do much to help her anymore because he didn't have these powers and things that she does. So I think him becoming a vampire was really an interesting point because it sort of makes him a part of this invisible shadow hunter world as a downloader, and you sort of see this development in him and he becomes stronger and more intricate and detailed as a character. In the first book it was so Clary based, and then in the second book you sort of jump between the characters a lot. At first I was getting really confused about who I was reading about, so I felt that sort of confusion, and I think that's why I had such a hard time getting into the start of this book. There was some really cool, hilarious comedic parts in the book, and I thought they were really well written and really well played out, and that Cassandra Clare done such a great job bringing humour into such a terrifying world, and literally like laughing out loud at certain points in this book, which was really cool. So in this book you find out that Clary and Jace are sort of Valentine's experiments. That Clary has sort of this power of the mind from the original angel, so she's able to create all these new runes. One of my favourite scenes in the book. Okay, so she created a fearlessness rune. So basically she created a rune, and when whoever wears it, they are no longer fearful of what they are doing. So she puts the rune on Alec. This scene just made me so happy and so excited, but then shattered me all in one, because she puts this rune on Alec, and then Alec basically comes out to his parents because he's like secretly seeing Magnus, which is sort of hinted in one of the scenes, but then we actually find out because Jace confronts him about it, and he goes to tell his parents, stops before he can say that it's a dude, and I was like, oh my god, like I was freaking out. It was the best, most amazing. Like I love Alec and I love Magnus, and them two together are just like this little bubble of sassiness, and I just love it. The ending of this book was so cool. And then they all go on Luke's truck, which Magnus like does power on, and so there's this big fight scene, and all the shadow hunters come, and Imogen sort of realizing who Jace is, and throughout the book Imogen doesn't really like Jace because he's Valentine's son, and then she finds out who Jace is because of a scar on his collarbone or his neck, and dies, and Jace is like, what's going on? The person ends up being in the same room with Valentine and Clary. He ends up saving Simon because Simon was taken by Valentine, so he saves Simon and feeds Simon his blood, and we're all in the same room with Valentine, and they're fighting and it's all going on, and Clary does this rune which opens the ship. Basically she uses a stronger rune that she used in the start of the book with Jace, and it basically opens the ship and just so I really did think that the ending of this book was so epic, literally just so epic. So at the ending of the book, Clary and Simon decide that they're better off being friends. Also, Simon is now a daylighter. He's the only one. Basically, that means that he is a vampire who can stand in the sun. Then Clary goes to see Jace. and she wants to tell him that basically she doesn't care that they're brother and sister, and that she just wants to be with him or have some sort of a relationship with him and it not be so awkward with them. But that's a little hard because Jay says, look, all I want to be with you is brother and sister, so she doesn't get the chance to say that. So she goes to the hospital and she meets Madeline. Madeline basically says she knows how she can wake up Clary's mum. All we want is for Jocelyn to wake up and tell us exactly what the hell is going down with it. Jocelyn has all these answers that nobody else can sort of give to Clary, and I feel like Madeline finally gave Clary what she needs to wake up her mum. If you like what I said with the first 2 books, then subscribe and then you can see more about what I have to say about different books and the rest of the Mortal Instruments series. I really hope to this year read a lot and share with you guys what I think about them, and so if you guys want to see more, subscribe. Bye!